This is Tech Talk with Denovo, virtual events that unlock the potential of legal case management software to save you time, reduce costs, and enhance your practice's overall performance. Let's make your life easier.
Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be joined this morning by Gregor Angus of Amiqus on our latest Tech Talk with Denovo. Morning, Gregor.
Morning, folks.
So today we're going to take a dive into the exciting world of AML and risk assessment. We will cover some enhanced efficiency, looking at some of our CaseLoad features, and look at how our partnership with Amiqus in terms of delivering AML compliance for legal firms makes a big difference to the firms that are using it. We'll talk a little bit about some of the firms that have used it, from my experience and from Gregor's experience, and we'll run through that as we go through the session. So thanks very much, Gregor, for joining us. I'm going to run through the Denovo case management risk assessment feature first. So I've got that up on screen just so it's a wee bit easier to dive into. So let's get started with that. So within the AML Risk Centre in CaseLoad, what you will see in some of our latest versions is the ability to do a digital risk assessment, some AML certification, and then we'll touch on the Amiqus integration as well. So what you can see on screen here is the risk assessment. So we've taken the latest version of the Law Society's risk assessment forum, and I'll chat about firms that have adopted this already in terms of their experiences. We've taken that forum, made it digital, and the results is what you can see on screen in terms of what's been filled out already. So I'm going to run through one of those just to show you the kind of ease of use in that. So if I click on the missing ones, basically ones that haven't yet to be completed, and I'm just going to pick one. So when you open up a matter inside CaseLoad, what you'll see is the AML Risk Centre tab, and it'll have an indicator to say it's either not been completed or the status. So green for low, medium for amber, and red for high. So clicking on that, we then open up the risk assessment itself. So this is a risk assessment in digital format all the way through the process. So it's something that a fee earner or someone within the legal firm, the conveyancer, will need to pay particular attention to throughout the transaction at the initial, interim, and final stages. And I'll show you how they can work with that as well as we move through the forum that we've built. So the first point is, what is the client's status? Are they a natural person or a non-natural person? The non-natural person is obviously a corporate entity, a commercial business. So that's when you would fill in the non-natural persons section. Let's go on the basis that they're a natural person, and I'll just quickly run through this document. I'm not going to go into it in any great detail. The questions that are asked on the document are going to be familiar to everyone if they've been doing paper-based ones. So basically what you'll do is you'll go through that form and you'll fill that out. So have you verified the client's identity using independent sources, such as Amiqus? You would say yes, hopefully, to that. And then you would answer the questions that are on screen in terms of the status of client, etc. So you're filling that form out all the way through. And I said I won't get into too much detail, but you're going to want to know the location of clients. So let's say within UK. Have you met the client face-to-face, or is it a non-face-to-face transaction? Questions around sanction and PEPs. Have we done acceptable ID verification? The source of wealth. So all of this is basically how we're assessing that client's risk. And a lot of that ties in with the AML of the client as well. So the risks factor associated with the client, not necessarily the transaction risk. We will come on to that. But this first screen is necessary to say what's the kind of status of this client. And there's a little bit down the bottom there about some reliance and risk appetite as well. Non-natural person naturally has a lot more questions that you need to answer. So those are available on there as well. And it's basically more company information gets added into that side of things. From a transaction risk point of view, so now we're looking at this actual transaction itself, this house purchase, this sale, whatever. what's the risk appetite look like with that, and how are we going to determine the status of this risk, whether it being low, medium, or high? So on the transaction risk, you want to say, could the transaction be used for money laundering? If it's a conveyancing transaction or anything involving clients' money, then the answer would be yes to that. Does the transaction make sense, or is it overly complex? And do you feel that this is within your firm's area of expertise? Is it normal? Just thinking about geographic location as well. Who's asking you to carry out the work? And then finally, you would just look at the value of the transaction, the source of funds, answer those questions in detail. And then obviously if there's funds being paid to the client, then we're looking at the destination of funds as well. So once you've done that, and it's a fairly quick process, and once you're kind of used to the questions, and you will be familiar with some of the questions already, you're then looking to do your risk assessment. So on the risk assessment, what we're looking to do is you to do initial, an interim, and a final. So that's what you can see on screen. So clicking on, say, medium, for example, you'll see it immediately knows it's been medium assessed on today's date by myself, and I would give a reason for that. If for some reason, or for any reason, that transaction then moves to higher risk, or you deem it higher risk in the first place, then you'll see that indicates a red status, and I'm just going to put high in there. So I would save and close that. We'll get to them a little bit in a minute in terms of what the next steps are. So I save and close that, and you'll see, even at matter level, I'm immediately aware that initially that was medium, then on the interim it moved to high. So what then happens is you would then get an email. So let me just bring up the right Outlook mailbox. So basically you're going to get, or the MLRO is going to get an email to let them know that that transaction has been flagged as high risk. So you can see that came in there. An AML risk alert. It's been performed on this matter. The stage was interim. The comment that you make appears here. You can see that's been assessed as high risk. So if I go back to my AML section, let's push this into the side. I can see this one that's just been created today. I can see a snapshot of the questions that have been answered. And then as I move across the screen, I can see the assessment has been tagged as medium and high. And then if I move across into my MLRO section, you can see that's now awaiting MLRO approval. So the MLRO would go in, see here that they've got to approve this transaction or reject if they choose to do so. Once they approve that transaction, give it the okay. Obviously, they'll assess that that is the appropriate course of action to take based on what's happened in the transaction and the reason. And you'll see that changes the status to approved by MLRO. And it'll come in a second, but then you would get an email to say that has now been approved, basically a feedback email to let you know that's the case. So in a kind of short snapshot, that is the risk assessment feature. There is an ability, or an upcoming ability, to have additional questions in there. So you see we're building in a section for additional data. I mean, the questions that we've put in there are based on the Law Society guidance. So we're quite comfortable that they answered the majority of questions that are going to be asked or needed to be filled out. So you are completely compliant with that. Just a little kind of story on that. We had one firm who's recently adopted this. They've had a Law Society inspection quite recently, and they are now in a good place. But before this system, they spent half the year paper-based and half the year on, like, or maybe not just less than half the year, maybe on this digital system. And they were running a lot of bother with the paper-based approach, like having it signed off at each stage just automatically and not really giving it any audit trail in that. I should say as well that the matter level, just to kind of clarify a little bit as well, on the matter level, you can see the status going into events as well. So what we've done there is we've not just got it tagged in the AML as well, the events and the activity on the file as well will show you exactly when each of these risk assessments were done. And now the most recent inspection they had in particular, the Law Society granted them high assurance for the systems that they've now put in place for capturing this information. So it's made a kind of a huge difference to how they operate day to day, and how they can track the risk assessment features as well. So I'll finish on the risk assessment stuff there. If anyone wants to know any more about that, they can ask a question at the end, or they can get in touch and ask us about the risk assessment feature inside CaseLoad. I want to switch over to the Amiqus integration. So there's quite a bit to cover in what we've built inside CaseLoad and working with Amiqus on their integration as well, and how that looks. So Gregor, do you want to kind of give a brief intro to Amiqus at this stage, just for anyone that's not aware of who you guys are and what you do?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Stephen, and thanks to everybody for joining. I know there's some familiar faces, names and firms in there, but some that we've not spoken to before. So thanks for coming along. Yeah, it's interesting, actually. I jotted down some notes yesterday about the partnership and the integration, how it works. And one of the things I'd highlighted was, I feel the biggest synergy between our businesses is we're trying to make your lives easier. And it's interesting, I saw in the intro there from Denovo, it's one of the things they call out. It's definitely something that both businesses are looking to do. We know there's lots of compliance. We know you have lots of clients. We know you have lots of, in some cases, staff. You have lots of other things to juggle on your plate. So if there's anything that we can do, and like I say, between ourselves, Denovo integration, to make your life easier, and hopefully that's helpful to you. AML compliance, of course, is always up there as one of the biggest pain points for firms. We know it's difficult. We know it's always changing. We know it can be different depending on the work type or the different departments within your business, and it can be very labor intensive if you're doing things manually. So hence Amiqus is trying to streamline that process for you and your client onboarding process in general. So yeah, to give you that brief overview of the Amiqus platform, what it does is allows you to carry out all the necessary checks for AML purposes that you would need to do on a new client. So verifying their address digitally and instantly, getting away from having to gather bits of paper, just doing that very quickly, seamlessly, instantly. Verifying photo ID documents, both in terms of verifying that document, that passport or driving license they have is a real, genuine document. Checks for authenticity of that against multiple data points, but also checks things like the police database of lost, stolen, known fraudulent documents. The second part is then verifying that the person in possession of that document is in fact the same person. So that's done through a biometrics check that will confirm to a percentage score that this person in possession of that passport is in fact the same person as is in the passport. So does it very quickly, does it very easily, it gives you a higher level of confidence than somebody bringing in a passport or sending you in a copy that you're trying to work out, is this the same person? It might be, looks vaguely like them, but it gives you a lot more confidence of what you're accepting. Screening for politically exposed persons, sanctions lists, and global adverse media checks. So, checking all those things for you, and then optional ongoing monitoring, which means that you take on a new client today, they're squeaky clean, but in 3 weeks or 6 weeks before you settle that conveyancing transaction for them, if they appear on a sanctions list at any point, that will be flagged to you in real time. So really useful kind of thing to have running in the background, keeps you safe, keeps everything, above board without you having to check those things manually as you're going along. And then, as Stephen said, allows you to complete those risk assessments throughout the transaction, comfortable and confident without having to go and run, any of those checks again at that point. It just runs in the background. We have source of funds functionality as well, in that we can gather some information from the client about how the matter's being funded, but then using an open banking check to verify that information as against their bank accounts. So yeah, that's kind of overview of the product. Conscious of time, just a couple of things I was just going to mention in terms of how it works, obviously, because that's often where the greatest efficiency and greatest wins come from. Obviously, with Amiqus, the Denovo Amiqus integration, it's literally a couple of clicks, as you'll see from Stephen very shortly, I'm sure, to send out an Amiqus request. The client then inputs their information. It's really easy, straightforward, simple for them to do that. But as soon as they do that, the result comes back to you instantly. So just the mechanism and the way it works means that these things are turned around very quickly, easily for clients. They don't need to download any apps, anything like that. Very, very straightforward. The average completion time, just to kind of highlight that, we send out between 60 and 70,000 of these now a month. The average completion time across the whole platform is around 24 hours. So your clients are getting this, they're completing it. It's really simple, straightforward for them to do it. So they're turning these things around quickly. Yeah, I think that's probably enough, is it, for now, Stephen? Just to kind of highlight the overview and what we're all about, and hopefully now you can maybe show how that works in practice.
Show how that works from the law firm and the client experience. So on the Amiqus section inside AML Risk Center, you'll see basically the status of each request. So each request that has been sent, what type of check has been asked for, the Amiqus client is against, when it was created, submitted, and whether it was completed or still shown as requested. So this is obviously demo data. So let's just pick one of the clients here. So you can double click a client on that grid, and it'll basically take you straight to the AML section. So you can see this guy is satisfied, but let's just crack on anyway and just do a request as if that's not the case. So within the AML section, you've now got a button called Perform Amiqus Checks. And basically what we can do in there is we can create the client. So if that happens to be a couple, you could create both clients in here. They would then show in this list, and then each of their requests would show. So if there's two persons in there, you would see all the requests that have been created against those. To create a request, you can do that on here or on the request button. But basically, you would highlight the person you want to make a request against, and then click create request. You'll log into Amiqus, and it'll basically take you straight into the request. So we're tying in the software to the Amiqus website here. You can see the the client code's been verified in there. They are existing person in this instance. We could be creating them as a new person if we hadn't already done checks previously. And then basically what you're presented with is a menu of options. So that menu of options, Gregor's succinctly just described in there in terms of what you're looking to do: identity, credit report, photo ID, watch list, banking, and dummy. Anything you want to kind of elaborate on that, Gregor? What do firms typically choose in that scenario?
No, I was just going to highlight, I suppose that up there on the top right, you can see a load template icon. That's really popular in that we can help firms at the outset set up templates. So that's usually by department, because it's often the case that for conveyancing matter, you're going to be doing more checks, source of funds being an example, banking information. You're going to do that where it's a conveyancing matter. You need to verify those source of funds. But for example, in your private client department, your wills, powers of attorney, executory type work, it may be that you're not doing some of those checks. So what we will do at the outset is help firms set up their template by department, so that when the fee earner or partners is going into this stage of sending out an Amiqus request, they can, on any case-by-case basis, decide which of these they want to do. But what's really popular is just being able to go to the template and say, this is a conveyancing purchase. Boom, this is the checks we always want to do in a conveyancing purchase. So as I say, you can overwrite that on any case-by-case basis, but that's been really popular for us in terms of, setting that template so that new people coming into the firm, or, trainees moving about department or whatever the case might be, they can still very easily make sure that they're doing this in a uniform way across different departments or across different offices, of course, as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So nothing gets missed depending on the type of transaction, because they've got a template to choose from, and it's quicker as well. No, that's ideal. So what I'll do is I'll just do a demo one just now for this purpose, just so we can see the integration in action. I'm going to request some documents. You can also attach documents in there. So I think that's useful to kind of, I know a lot of our firms are using that, Gregor, as well, to send things out like the terms of business, etc. Just giving the firm the information in a kind of workflow style manner as well.
Yeah, exactly that. It's just, I suppose what we've built, we feel is more than just an AML tool. This sort of functionality makes it, as I say, more of a client onboarding tool generally, so that you can securely exchange documents with your clients. That example being, your terms of business, or as you say, you can request documents from your client. So depending on the work, it might be you need to request a share certificate or a marriage certificate or utility bills or whatever it is that might be a court writ or something they've received. You can request those things securely through the platform at the same time as you're asking them to do certain things for AML purpose. So yeah.
Yep. And then just finally, forums as well. You can get them to fill forums out as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we have sort of template forms, but these can all be customized to your individual needs. So the example I've mentioned is a source of funds form, but equally, if you have a marketing questionnaire or form that you would always have a conveyancing sale client fill out, that can be one of your template forms here. Equally, you might have a questionnaire or form that maybe new wills clients fill in to get some sort of basic information before they then come in to see you to kind of flesh out the will itself. If there's anything like that that'd be useful for you to get upfront from the client, you can do that through our forms functionality.
Okay, so I've just picked a wee quick form that's just got a couple of questions on it that we can just fire through when we do the request part of it. So we'll set that by email. The client will do that within 24 hours because that's what you've said they will do, but they do get a reminder as well every couple of days just to let them know that that's still to be completed. And I think that tells them that they've done part of it as well. It'll give them an update as to things they've still to complete as well, which is useful because sometimes you go in to something and you kind of fill part of it out. So we report in each part of the check as well. So you can see that from within CaseLoad and within your Amiqus as well, what's been done for each part as well. So we'll send that off and you'll see the status then says this person requires review, and basically you can see from a fairness perspective for this individual person that's now awaiting completion. You can see what we've asked them for. We're doing a dummy check that would be filled with the checks that were being carried out. We've got a form, a document transfer, and a utility bill. So those are all still to be carried out, and that email has been sent to the client effectively. So I'll just go back to the dashboard and explain it a little bit around here. So you can see on the request, basically you would see all of your requests in here that are assigned to me because I've assigned that one to myself. You would see the status of those, whether they're in progress or ready for review. So what I'm going to do is going to go and complete that one as the client now. My emails are just playing up a little bit this morning for some reason. So we'll go and have a look and see what that email looks like, what the email that's just been sent from Amiqus to the client looks like, and how we then complete that Amiqus request. So your firm's logo would be on here. It would say the firm has requested that you complete the following request, and then you would start the request. So like Gregor says, there's no app to download. This will take us straight into the website. They don't have to sign in or create an account for anything. It's basically just straight into filling out the information that's required. So they're going to verify their details. They would be carrying out those checks mentioned, like credit and banking and etc., photo ID. I've asked them to fill out a form. we're sending them a document that they can view or look at, and we're also requesting a document as well. So let's click continue, check the personal details. If the personal details have been put in Denovo, and then that carries through to Amiqus, which then carries through to the screen. So nothing's having to be duplicated in terms of the information. They can type in their address. For that, let's just pick one at random. It doesn't really matter for this purpose. They would accept the terms. Sorry, just missed. You can see there's validation fields in there if the data is not filled out properly. And then we'll just do a double check, which only really just requires a postcode, which I'll just pop in and get to the more interesting parts in a little second. So property details, questions, etc. So this is how simple it is, and it's really good on a mobile device as well, Gregor, where they're able to fill that out. It's very mobile friendly. I'm obviously on a website at the moment, but the layout and the way that they can answer these questions is really easy, and you can see even type in further information, and it makes it really simple to fill those forms out. I mean, this is a very basic one, but you could be asking them quite a bit of information. I've seen some firms use quite detailed questionnaires they ask people about as well.
Yeah, so you can have things in here like smart logic. So you can have, if it's a, perhaps a first question is a yes or no, it can take them down a different track of questions depending on their answer to that. So you can build these things to be, as efficient for your use as you need. Some of the latest developments mean you can add in things like, if there's a question there that maybe has some, guidance on, the Law Society's website, for example, you can add in like a URL, you can add in a link there that people can then go and look at that guidance that they need to look at before they fill in the answer to the question. So yeah, this functionality is really, really popular.
Yeah, no, that's ideal. So we'll continue that on. They can review those questions before they complete that. Then any documents we send them, they can download. So they can just click the download button. You see that's downloaded the document. So I can open it, I can review it, I can see anything I need to do with that document before proceeding with the transaction. Confirm we've downloaded that. And then for uploading documents, really simple and easy. I've done this on tablets, mobiles, websites as well. I mean, the functionality in terms of these makes it so easy just to pick up. I'll just do those to pick up those documents, upload them, and then click submit and continue. So it's really easy to pull that information together. You can do that from your photos, from your files, from anywhere. It's really simple to upload those documents as well, and they can be uploaded in any format as well. So they'll then submit and continue. So you can see that is submitted. The client will get an email to say that's completed the fee, and or the person that's assigned in Amiqus will get an update as well. So if I just refresh in here, you'll see that's now ready for review. So the one we've just issued today with those questions is now ready for review. And you can see the status has changed. The dummy check's been accepted. The form's been completed. I only answered 3 of those questions I see from the form. And the document has been sent, and they've uploaded those bills as well. So at that stage, providing you're happy with the information that's been provided, we're looking for you to approve that status and then mark that as reviewed. And what that does is that triggers the information to go back into CaseLoad, so we can see how that's affecting the client as well. So we'll just have a wee look at that now. Just go back. So you can see that latest request has came in. The document's downloaded to here. The questions you can see have been answered. We can open that document up. Now that's very short. Normally that would be a lot longer with the banking requests, the credit checks, the photo ID. So I've seen kind of some fairly lengthy documents being added in there as well. and you can see the form and the questions, and obviously the metadata behind who signed that, where it was signed as well, is obviously very, very important. If I look at the events for that client record now, what you can see, and this is an updated version of our integration between ourselves, the request being created and then an event being created for those documents coming back. So what you get to see in there is basically what's just been added as well. So we've taken it a stage further. It used to be we just got the AML ID stuff back and that's saved to the file. But now at the start of the transaction, you can see the documents that have been requested here and that I uploaded are being attached to the client record file. But also taking that a stage further, Gregor, as well, throughout that transaction, what we've built between ourselves is that ability for them to request documents, not just at the start, but also much further in. So prior to settlement, for example, in a conveyancing transaction, you might be needing the bank statements at that point. You can do the same thing. I mean, you can go into the AML section, perform Amiqus checks, and do a request, but just do a request for a document. We're not needing the ID stuff back at that stage. We just want the client to send us a couple of documents. So that's opening up the website straight down to request document, clicking a couple of buttons and submit, and then the client does the same thing as well. So we've taken it a stage further than that. We can use that throughout the transaction as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, often something we're asked is, do we have to do all this at the outset, or we would normally do this at a later stage? That's absolutely fine. You can workflow this and timeline it however works best for your processes. As Stephen said, you can do lots of things up front from an AML perspective, but perhaps if you want to just clarify a couple of things or gather a couple of extra documents, just prior to settlement, you can absolutely do that.
Yeah, no, ideal. And on the documents view as well, like you can easily see everything the client supplied from a transaction point of view with a little client record indicator beside it. You can see everything that we've asked for, and that will start to build up that documents and list as well. So yeah, I think we've been quite slick there in providing that demo. And I think that's kind of part of the point we were making earlier on. It's not cumbersome for the fee earner to do these requests. It takes seconds to submit that request. Of using those templates as well, you can really see the efficiencies behind being able to send that request. And then the flip side from the client's perspective as well, we don't want to make it difficult for them to provide that information as well. So I think you can see as quickly as we've been filling those out why it does happen within 24 hours, because it's not a cumbersome process. Okay, so I think that kind of covers what we wanted to mainly show today. I'm going to open up the Q&A section now. So if anyone has any questions, they can fire them in, and we'll just give them a couple of seconds to start to fill them through. I'm going to ask one to start with, well, anyone's got any further questions to ask. How long, say a client, a Denovo or a non-Denovo client comes to Amiqus and says, we want to get set up, how quickly can that happen? And do you have any examples of either firms that don't have a system or firms that are just kind of starting out to kind of share with us?
Yeah, no. The answer is little bit unhelpfully, it depends. But I mean, we can have somebody set up on Amiqus with credentials to be able to log in within a matter of days. Really, it depends on how quickly the firm fills in the information we need, because as you'll appreciate, we need to carry out a little bit of due diligence to satisfy that the firm has valid reason to be getting this personal data back about their clients. But literally that takes a few days. The bigger factor to the timescales really is, how many different departments do you have? How can we help you set up your templates for different departments? How many people need trained? That sort of thing. Obviously the Denovo integration, that again, that's very quick to can be very quick to turn on. So it's really more kind of the timescales at the law firm's end than our end, to be perfectly honest. As I say, we can get you set up, get the integration active if it's a Denovo user within, you know, a matter of days. It's just then arranging kind of that process, you know, understanding that process to understand what do you want to do by different department or by work type, so we can set up your templates for you, because we do that and then do the training with all the users so that the system is set up as it will be for their use. So yeah, I mean, as I say, it depends, but certainly within, you know, a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, you could be set up, have your training, be ready to go.
Yeah, no, that's ideal. Another kind of question, I'm just going to move on to the Q&A in a little second. How does it work with older clients as well? The ones that maybe aren't online or have smartphones or aren't kind of comfortable using?
Yeah, no, that's a common question for, you know, certain types of firm. There's probably two slightly different answers to this. First is that we've built this with ease of use for the client kind of from the outset. That's kind of the, you know, fundamental of Amiqus, is about improving access to legal services for people. And that means being able to get a lawyer, being able to carry out this AML stuff, to be able to get the lawyer, you know, able to do their work. So we are used by some public sector organisations. Scottish Government, for example, if you get a job at the Scottish Government, you go through certain Amiqus checks pre-employment. And to win these public sector contracts, we need to meet the highest level of what they call web accessibility. So this needs to be really easy for people to use, really simple, regardless of their age, technical ability, don't necessarily need to have the latest phone and so on. So it really is simple, easy for people to complete, as you know, hopefully people have seen there from the demo. And we've had people over 100 years old complete Amiqus checks. Having said that, I do appreciate that there are people who just outright refuse to do these sorts of things over, you know, over email and remotely. So the second part to answer the question is that when you were creating that Amiqus request, people might have seen there were 2 or 3 different options of how you can do that. And one of them is in person. So that means that you can still carry out all of these checks, still have that uniform approach across your business, regardless of whether the client's coming in to see you or doing it remotely before they come in to see you. So all the firm needs is like a tablet or laptop or something in their meeting room, because the person still has to agree to the data subject terms. They still need to understand what checks are being run, what information is coming back on them. But essentially, you or them with you in the room can input their address, can take a photograph of their document, do all of those other things that you might want to do. So as I say, you're still getting that uniform approach, a clear audit trail across the business. But that's the, you know, those are the 2 options really. You know, one, send it out remotely, because you might be pleasantly surprised that more people are able to do this than maybe at first thought. And secondly, you can do it in person.
Ideal. No, that's perfect. Just a couple of questions we've got getting asked about kind of specifics in terms of the Denovo application as well. How does lead through to cash room to trigger a cash job to be opened? The AML section for each client, whether it's in CaseLoad or in the accounts at the moment, you will see the AML status in there. So you will always see that as satisfied, and that goes across all Denovo applications. You'll see that information. So the AML information will feed through in terms of the contact and information. So you're not having to manually fill that out. Everything that's been fed through from Amiqus will show in the account section as well. Another question, we do have our lead system inside CaseLoad as well, and we don't support the Amiqus request at leads, but it does have to be a client record to be able to submit that request, because it needs a client code, which is what matches the information coming back. So there's not a functionality to do that from leads. It would have to be when a client's been when a lead has been converted into a client. You would then submit the request and then carry on with the transaction from there. I'll see if there's any more questions come in. What about we've looked at the kind of setup for Amiqus, Gregor. What would be the costs involved in terms of setup? How does that work? Can you give us a kind of explanation around that?
Yeah, again, the main kind of how we charge for the product really depends on a few different factors, such as you know, how many users are there going to be at your firm, but that's really from a sort of how many people need training, you know, what's the implementation look like? As I say, is it 8 different departments that do different things, or is it, you know, just 1 or 2? So we factor that in at the outset. But the most important, you know, thing is the volume of people or clients that you're going to be checking through the system each month or each year. So essentially, it's scalable cost-wise. You know, we have sole practitioners up to international law firms because it's essentially you're paying for your usage depending on your volumes. One thing, of course, worth highlighting is that you are entitled to pass a cost on to your client for this, and I would say 95, if not 99% of our clients do pass a cost on to their client. Law Society are perfectly happy for you to do that. They would rather you use something that's more robust than not. And yeah, so most of our clients pass on a cost that makes Amiqus either cost neutral or in certain circumstances it's maybe profitable. But certainly, you know, the cost you can pass on should make it, you know, at least cost neutral. So, I mean, specifics about how much it will cost per firm, happy to for anybody to get in touch, and I can look at, you know, what are your volume of new clients, and I can work out what the pricing would look like, you know, monthly or annually based on that.
Well, that's ideal. I should say as well, for everyone watching this webinar, we recorded and shared out. And as part of that email, we'll share both myself and Gregor's contact details if there's any further questions that come out of this. I think that's it for today. So we're pretty much bang on the 45 minutes. Nice and slick on this very miserable December morning. Certainly in the West Coast here. So appreciate your time for joining us, Gregor. That was really useful. It was good to hear it from kind of both sides, and we're able to share the kind of case studies and stories of firms that have been using that, and hopefully everyone can see there's certainly some efficiencies to make life easier as we claimed at the start.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for having me, and yeah, happy to chat to anybody. Yeah, they can get in touch through those contact details or visit our website, whatever's easiest. Happy to have a chat.
Brilliant. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll catch you next time on Tech Talk with Denovo.